Guys, we're filming today at Empire Lounge in Fort Lauderdale. This is, trust me, it's an amazing place. I love it very much. They have another lounge in Brickell, Miami, which I hope I will be able to go to. But this place it really feels like home here, and I like it very much. And I hope that I will be filming quite a few of my guests here. Today we have Charlie Turano, and I don't like the word GOAT, okay? So I will say that Charlie, in my book, is an absolute legend, and it's the guy who achieved such a success in almost each and everything that he's been doing. It deserves a lot of respect. And Charlie will talk a little bit about different businesses that he was or is in. And I expect that we'll hear a couple of interesting stories.
I hope so. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And I agree with you. I love Empire. And the one in Brickell is equally as cool. I love Empire. Everybody here is wonderful.
Yep. So Charlie, let's talk a little bit about what is that you've been doing now, and what is that you've done in the past, and a few stories related to this or that thing, because I think that you have something to share with us.
Well, I hope so. And thanks for having me on, by the way.
Appreciate it.
Well, my career really started in sports. So everything I've done for the last 40 years has been in the sports field, either as a broadcaster, working for teams, having my own agency, and now I'm part of a group that has an archival facility that takes care of a lot of sports things. So really, it all started with the Dallas Cowboys back in '89. That was my first big break.
So how you managed to get a job with in Dallas with the Dallas Cowboys?
So the Dallas Cowboys was really an interesting situation. I was working at the Dallas Sidekicks, an indoor soccer team, when Jerry Jones famously bought the Dallas Cowboys in 1989. I was brought over to the Dallas Cowboys to run sort of their sponsorships, marketing, and media. And remember back then, there was the front office was maybe 20 people. Now they might have 20 people in the public relations department. So this was a much simpler time. And Jerry was really motivated, to create revenue. And that's what we did with him. There's a guy there named Joel Finglass that came up with the private seat licenses, which are now famous. Mm-hmm. So back then, you were really coming up with ways for the team to be competitive. And the great thing I'll always remember about Jerry Jones is that he was always very positive. So even when we were selling sponsorships and the team was 1-15 the first year and 3-13 the second year, he kept saying, guys, you got to sell like we're going to win the Super Bowl. And lo and behold, couple years later, the Cowboys, won Super Bowl, but was first of the 3 out of 4 years. So that positivity was really what got us through those days of selling, because we knew we had something that we believed in. It was just our job to try to get other people to believe in it.
So he was patient enough, allowing you to...
Well, patience he's optimistic. Patient is maybe not one of his great virtues, but his being intentional, being passionate, and really wanting to move forward quickly is one of his great strengths. But he had a strong belief. And I actually ran into Mr. Jones and the family on the field last year at the home opener in Cleveland on the sideline before the game. And granted, I had not seen Jerry or his family for probably 10 years or maybe 20. And we ran into each other, reconnected. And, that's one thing he was stressing to one of my friends there. He goes, you know what? Charlie and I are cut from the same cloth. We're both very positive. We feel like anything can happen. And really a lot of my positivity came from my experience at the Dallas Cowboys.
Anything about this beef between the Cowboys and the Giants?
Well, the Cowboys don't like the Giants. I don't think the Giants don't like the Cowboys either. I think it goes back a long way, to tell you the truth. The Dallas Cowboys' very first coach was a guy named Tom Landry, Hall of Famer, 29 years, great coach. Well, he started as a player and then a coach for the New York Giants. So, sometimes these rivalries are built on a history of something that created the rivalry. Now, certainly being in the same division, both teams being competitive at the same time, maybe one of them being the team that eventually goes for the Super Bowl that year or whatever, creates a rivalry. But I think it started much earlier when Tom Landry was the coach of the Cowboys, wanting to beat his old team.
So Mr. Jones inherited that kind of attitude or spirit.
Well, when you're at the Dallas Cowboys, you inherit a really rich tradition of winning. And, of course, being America's team, a lot of other teams resent that. Right. Why are you America's team?
Right.
So those were all just factors in creating a really dynamic and wonderful environment to work in and to learn in. For me, you got to learn on some subject matter that was really exciting in a town that was passionate about their team, and to create revenue for a team like that was really an honor. And I remember staring at my business card every day saying, I can't believe I've got this helmet with this star on it with my name, and I'm actually working for the Dallas Cowboys. And it was a great experience.
It's almost like I compare that when you're hired by a newspaper, right? And you see your first story.
Byline.
Yeah, exactly. You see your byline and you're on cloud nine. I remember I just called my parents saying, please, please, please look at that. They've published my first story. So it was, I understand this feeling. Anything interesting that happened while you've been working for Dallas?
For Dallas, well, I mean, the greatest thing was really, I never stay a place too long. Mm-hmm. So once we've achieved quite a bit, I went to Jerry Jr., who was my intern at the time, and Mr. Jones, and told them that I wanted to leave. And of course, they were fairly upset.
Why did you decide to leave?
Well, I decided to leave because in looking at the situation, you understood that this was a family-run business, mm-hmm. and I wasn't part of the family. Okay. As much as I liked them and they liked me, I knew that a long-term future wasn't probably there for me, so I wanted to do something on my own. We started our own sports marketing agency, Genesco Sports Enterprises, and Jerry Jones was extremely helpful. He did a video for us that we could show to clients. Mm-hmm. So we maintained a relationship, brought a lot of our clients over to the Cowboys. We represented Pepsi and MasterCard and Motorola and Coors in all their negotiations with teams.
So you basically became the biggest company when it comes to sponsorship, sports sponsorship.
Well, I don't know
in the country, or at least one of like two or three.
Right, we were really very influential. We were one of the most influential privately held companies. Mm-hmm. There are these companies that have maybe, here's a great, got your cigar. So we have, there are companies that had, maybe more employees, more revenue. But at that time, we really did, do a lot in sports marketing for Pepsi. We created their sports marketing platform, the same for Coors Brewing Company and others. So, it was a very dynamic time. You could take what you learned from one industry, the Dallas Cowboys, with an inside look, and then apply that to how a company like Pepsi would leverage their sports sponsorships.
So you used your experience working for the Cowboys to basically start your own company and move up the ladder, so to speak. Any kind of I think for people, what might be interesting is how did you conduct these negotiations? How you were trying to convince, these giants of industry in this country to be more
believe in sports.
Right, exactly.
Well, it wasn't easy. I had a great partner, John Tatum, and together, he had come from the player side where he worked as a representative and represented Dan Marino. So he understood the player side really well. And I understood the team side. And together we could walk into a company like Pepsi. They had done a little sports marketing, and we could have the conversation. It was really a pretty frank conversation. It's, how do you currently, negotiate your deals now? And would you like to put some process behind it to be more effective? And of course, they don't give you the NFL first. First we're working in minor league baseball and major league soccer, and as we move up, they gave us more and more responsibility. You had to prove yourself along the way, but eventually we were able to, wrestle the National Football League away from Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola had it for 26 years, and it became a Pepsi property. And now when you watch the games, even today, years later, Pepsi is the official sponsor of the National Football League.
How difficult was that? I'm interested. Why? How did you manage to do that? What was the push? What was the message?
The important thing was making it a priority for our client. Because, when you're a big company, you can do many things. So our part was really to convince them that it was a good move. And then as far as the negotiation goes, Pepsi was really smart, did a lot of study and research. They supported us on it. And it took about 3 years to position ourselves for when Coke's deal was not being renewed. And we were able to position ourselves as someone to consider. And we got support from the owners, and Jerry was one of them that supported our position to be able to support the league in a bigger way, besides financially, promotionally.
So the Coke didn't renew the contract.
Well, they didn't renew, so it was up for bid. So it was Coke versus Pepsi, which is a common thing,
Right. So it didn't leave Coke with some kind of a bad feeling that Pepsi took over, or?
Well, I imagine there probably was a bad feeling. Anytime you get the NFL from
No,
your portfolio
I understand, but since it's not about bidding, rather one side decided not to renew and the other side stepped in.
Well, they didn't renew, but they thought they were going to renew. So, they didn't renew before it was over. They let it go to the open market.
But yet you've managed to keep good relationship with Coke anyway, or not?
Well, I mean, personally, I have good relationships with both. I think Pepsi and Coke never get along, but that's okay.
No, well, that's understandable.
It's very healthy competition. I think it makes both companies better, when you have an adversary to go after. But I have a lot of respect for both.
So this company, right, moved ahead and...
I was part of Genesco Sports Enterprises for 17 years, sold to my business partner who wanted to continue in the agency world. They've done a fantastic job.
Why did you sell?
For me, I just saw a lot of other agencies coming into the business, and it looked like a very crowded space. And when you're in sports or when you're in an agency business like that, 1 year turns into the next pretty quickly. And I'd spent a long time there, and I was just ready to do something else, and I knew it was in very capable hands. The business partner that I sold it to, John, has done a fantastic job. The agency was recently up for Agency of the Year through Sports Business Journal. Out for their 30th anniversary, he had me come out and speak to the staff with him around the holidays. I probably talk to John once a month or something and run into Genesco quite frequently. There's a really good feeling of support I have between them. For me, it was a chapter in my life, and it was a chapter I don't mind revisiting at all. I love it. But I just want to do something different.
So they still allow you on the premises, right?
Yeah. They more than that, they actually welcome me, and I feel really honored to go there. They speak very nicely of me in front of people, so I enjoy that.
When you go back, if I may, if you go back and think about what was, to give me an example of maybe the most tense negotiations, the most difficult process that to a point that it would not allow you to sleep well at night.
Well, almost all of them. But really, I think you hit on the first one. I think when we were negotiating the NFL for Pepsi, Pepsi had tried the NFL a couple other times and not been successful. So we were fearful at the time that if we pushed on the NFL and wanted to get that negotiation done, if it didn't happen, that, Pepsi hypothetically could have pulled their business from us. We're negotiating under a veil of, well, we may lose this deal, but more importantly, we may lose our biggest client. But at the time, we felt like it was our responsibility to push our client to something that we felt was good for them. It was a risk for the company.
You didn't have plan B?
You never have plan B.
Yeah, okay.
Plan B shows up when plan A doesn't work. So, no, we didn't have, we had other clients, but none as big as Pepsi. They were our biggest client. But fortunately, it worked out, and we were able to use that success to find other clients. And Genesco's done a great job. They represent still some of the greatest brands you'll ever see, still represent Pepsi, obviously. So that was a great part of my life. And the good thing for me is it led to other things for me.
No, of course. And then, as they say, when the first big one comes in, and the others
may follow.
Exactly.
You hope they do.
So after you sold your 50% share at Genesco, what he decided to do next?
Well, I had like a 5-year non-compete. So for 5 years, I stayed away from the sports business. And for me, it was a real blessing because I felt like I could step away from the business rather than looking at it right here in front of your face, put it at arm's length and get a better view at what that business is all about. But it gave me the opportunity to invest in Lombardo Custom Apparel, the clothing store. I had invested in 8 Jimmy John's restaurants, a brewing company. So I got to do some things that were a lot of fun. I had a steakhouse for 6 years. That was really a beautiful experience. And
Have you ever done anything related to the restaurant business? How did you do that?
well, I knew someone who was in the restaurant business who was a good friend of mine, and he told me that he was leaving and was looking for a spot, and I had just sold Genesco, so I had a little money that I had not planned on. So I said, well, let's do it together. I'd always been intrigued about the restaurant business as well. It worked out really well. We had it for 6 years. We didn't make a lot of money, but we made a lot of memories. We had a lot of fun and really enjoyed ourselves.
And where was that place?
It was in Dallas.
Okay.
So it was a great restaurant, and it was right there on the tollway.
Is it open right now?
No,
or
no,
is
not anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was an old Fleming's. And so it was a beautiful big restaurant, great wine selection, live music. It was just a lot of fun.
You know, I stayed in Dallas for a couple of years, and I remember the name. People mentioned the name of the place. That's very, very interesting. But this transition from something really big that you had to something relatively small, like, for example, the clothing store, right?
Yeah.
How did it go? How you figured out? How did you find partners?
The clothing store was existing.
I know.
It's Lombardo Custom Apparel. He's a gentleman that I went to college with. Did a great job. He was famous in town. I got my clothes from there anyway. And so I just asked him, like, hey, do you mind could I be a partner? And he was gracious enough to let me in as a partner. And we leveraged a lot of our relationships. They're still in business, doing quite well. But he did all the suits for Tom Landry back in the day, and Troy Aikman and Emmett Smith and Jimmy Johnson.
So you brought
still sports. He was doing sports celebrities anyway, so it was a natural
Then it's
fit.
relevant.
Yeah, it was a
then it
natural
was
fit.
relevant. Right. What about this? What was that fast food chain? The
Jimmy John's. So it was a receptionist that I had, and her husband had one Jimmy John's, and he wanted, not a receptionist, I'm sorry. It was a client. It was a client that I had, and her husband had started with one, and he wanted to expand to a second or a third. And so I provided the capital to do that. And he was the hardest working guy, a guy named Brent Herbeck. And for 16 or 17 years, he grew it more than I did, but we grew to about 8 or 9 stores and he operated them all, did a fantastic job. They were always profitable.
And you're still involved in this business?
Well, we actually sold a year ago. We sold all of them a year ago, last January, a deal that he orchestrated. And so the partners did really well from that. But it really was his hard work every day that maintained, the level of his success and position it for a sale. I believe that everything is bought to be sold.
Correct.
If you want to have chapters in your life. And for me, working for one company forever was never my plan.
Well, with all due respect, I doubt that you know anything about sandwiches. Well,
I've learned it.
Outside.
No, I've learned a lot. They taught me a lot. And Jimmy John's is a great franchise. I loved it for so many reasons. And I was very proud of, the product that we put out. It was healthier for you, and it was quick and convenient. It was priced well for a hardworking person to go grab a sandwich and get it quick during a lunch hour. They did catering. So yeah, I was really proud of Jimmy John's.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you honestly, before moving to Dallas, I've never heard about that. But then some of my friends started talking about, oh, you know what? I was just driving somewhere and I was really hungry and I stopped on the way and I went to Jimmy John's and I got this and I got that. So, they have Jimmy John's here.
Everywhere. There's 4,000 of them.
Right.
Nationally.
So at some point I'll stop and try it. I've never tried it.
Well, I'll bring you anytime you want to go. I absolutely love it. And I still have them like once every couple of weeks for sure. Yeah.